Welcome to a pilot edition of what we hope will become a regular feature for ISL in the future. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the chaotic world of police statement taking. I'm joined with Pam, who is our host, Mirella, a professional interpreter from Manchester, Barhani, a professional interpreter from Leeds, and Jazz, a police officer with West Yorkshire Police.
So now we're going to look at whether the interpreter should be left alone with either the detainee, victim or the witness. So Jazz, what is your official take on this topic?
So when it comes to interpreters being left alone with, obviously in Barhani's situation, it's an offender in the custody area, that shouldn't really happen on any occasion whatsoever.
Okay.
If the police officer or whoever from the police background are dealing with the individual, I understand there could be odd occasions where they've just forgotten to pick up something, a piece of paper or something, and yes, it will only take a split second to go get that. But realistically, they shouldn't be leaving you because you don't know the warning markers of the offender, and obviously you've been left in a room on your own with him. You have no idea what he's been detained for, the reasons why he's there, what background he's got. If you're ever in a situation like that, you are in a position to ask the officer if the offender has any warning markers. Had the officer have taken a lot longer than anticipated, you have got in a interview room within a police station, you have a black strip that runs across the room. It's sort of middle of the room, and then you have one by your feet as well. So you can either kick it by your foot and it'll activate straight away and all the red lights will start blaring. That alarm is automatically connected to the custody area, and they know from a board which room it is, and within a matter of seconds somebody will be with you. But sometimes that can be too late, in that couple of seconds. You have no idea what's going to happen. The offender has been searched before they have been put into a cell, and obviously they shouldn't have anything on them when they come in interview. Simple things like a pen, they can use that as a weapon. You should not ever be left alone, ever. And you are able to express that to the officer, and they should also know that.
Okay, but there may be situations where it may be a victim or a witness that's coming to give a statement. Would they be searched?
No, rightly or wrongly, we deal with victims and witnesses on a daily basis, and interpreters are required, and as you're both probably aware, you just put in a room with them. Again, if it's a room that you've got access to take the statement, you will have the panic alarms. They are in all the rooms that members of the public use. So if you are left alone, although you should never be left alone, you can activate those alarms. Also, if for whatever reason you think that the officer might be leaving you for a couple of seconds, maybe just to go print off some statement papers, you can say, is there any warning markers that I need to be aware of? And they should tell you. But again, they should never ever leave you alone with them. They are not searched at, witnesses and victims. Not everybody who enters the police station is searched. You are only searched if you go into the custody area.
Okay, so if the police if it looks as though the police constable is going to be leaving the interpreter in the interview room or the custody area on their own with an offender, witness or victim for longer, how should the interpreter deal with that?
It's quite simple. Refuse to do it, because they shouldn't be putting you in that situation where you have even got to contemplate being left alone with whichever person you're dealing with. Just refuse to do it, say you're not doing it. And they should know that they shouldn't be doing that. It's in all the police guidelines. It's a lot of old school police officers will do it because there was no written rule for us years ago, and I've done it because again we didn't have a written rule, but now we do, and that's gone on for a number of years also. So all police officers are aware, because sometimes if officers are leaving interpreters on their own to take the statements, the quality that's produced is not even good enough for court. It's not good enough to process in the file. It certainly can't be used as evidence in court, and then we have to do the whole procedure again, get another interpreter in and start from scratch.
Yeah, that is another topic that we will be following on in a short while. So thank you for that, Jazz and Barhani, for that input. So in regards to taking statements, who normally asks the questions when the statement is being taken at the time? I mean, Jazz, according to your processes during the statement taken, does the police officer ask the questions, and is the interpreter responsible for producing the statement in the native language?
No, the police officer needs to liaise via the interpreter to the third party to get the whole scenario. So first off, we would start off with getting a background. So for argument's sake, if we're talking of, it's just an example I'm going to give, a domestic assault. So you would need all the background, and obviously that would be a three-way system to get the background, and then it is the officer's duty to explain to you how that information needs to be documented. It can't be something simple like, yes, I woke up this morning and then he slapped me or she slapped me because I said X, Y and Z. No, you go right back to where it started from. They might have been married for 10 years, how long the relationship has been volatile, what children they have, any background leading up to the day that it's happened. There's got to be a background. So you start off with the background, actually what's happened, and then you finish it off with what their wishes are, how it's to be dealt with, etc. But the police officer should give you that format, because for every case it can be slightly different.
Okay, over to Morella. Can you think of any incidents where you may have had any problems during statement taking?
Oh, well, I can't remember to any moment when I had a problem when taking a statement.
Okay.
It's just because I think the interpreter is there to interpret what the less efficient speaker is saying. What I'm trying to say, interpreter should never ever replace the PEC or the detective constable. I had an experience in a court.
Okay.
When the interview was produced on video, it was shown in front of the jury, and we just noticed, me and the prosecution interpreter as well, that the interpreter was playing the role of the police officer, meaning that the police detective was asking something,
okay,
and the interpreter was interpreting something else. Like, for example, it was about a triple raping, so supposed raping, and the victim says she has been raped 3 times, and then the police officer asks, okay, and when the second rape happened? And the interpreter interpreted between the first and the third rape when the second one happened. I am not going to mention for confidentiality, but in this case, the interpreter is practically substituting the police officer, and this should not happen. Because basically what happened in the court, all these kind of statements are being cut off, are not being taken into consideration, then the CPS basically lose the evidence.
Exactly.
Because every interpreter should be aware that if the case is being brought into the court, that is the evidence on which the CPS is relying on.
Yeah, we will be touching on the quality of the statements in a short while, so that's a very, very good point to make. How do you think the process could be made easier? So when you're taking interpreter statements, how do you think the process could be made easier so that there are less problems when you are taking the statements?
I think a briefing every time it's a welcome idea. I mean, it's good for the interpreter to be briefed about the case. And also, I think the police constable should check with the interpreter if he or she is comfortable of taking the statement, because sometimes, who knows, the background of the interpreter might keep them away, or might make them uncomfortable to get that kind of statement. It's also again about the religion, the tradition. It could be that a woman, for example, wouldn't feel comfortable to talk in front of a male about being raped, or maybe an interpreter, a female interpreter, taking a statement from a male who is describing how he raped a woman, or how these kind of things happen.
Yeah, and sometimes also it's very, very important, if as an interpreter you have that cultural awareness of or within your community or a particular religion or sect, it's always worth mentioning to the professional, because the professional may not be aware. For example, like within the Asian community, a female would not feel comfortable talking about a sensitive issue with a male, and that way that could impact on the quality of the evidence on the statement, because if they don't disclose all the information, that's going to have an overall impact on the whole case. So that's why it's very, very important that we can, if if asked, you can give a background or any information that you have with regards to cultural knowledge that you can pass on to the professional,
Yes.
because they may not have that information, and it could then put the whole case at jeopardise the case.
Because sometimes an interpreter, just for cultural considerations, might use a word which would be synonymous with what is being said, but if the case comes into the court, that paraphrasing is not the right one.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. So between the woman who said she has been raped, what she said in Romanian, we had a scandal, we had a scene, what the interpreter said, probably anticipating knowing the case, she said he forced her. Between having a domestic argument and being forced, it's...
Exactly, and it's a completely different interpretation especially within a court setting, but even within the police, and that could have an impact on the overall outcome of the case.
So I think the interpreter in that case should maybe notify the police detective that she feels she has some kind of maybe feelings about this matter of raping, and she should decline the interpretation, because apparently the interpreter was more affected about the events than the victim was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we will be touching upon...
There was no impartiality. And all the time, the interpreter should have cold blood and be impartial.
Exactly. That's one of the main points of the Interpreter Code of Conduct Guidelines. Yeah. You know, because if you need to be impartial and professional at all times. And also, again, the scenario that you've just talked to us about, Mirella, it also shows that how important it is for the interpreters to be familiar with the different types of terminology that you may come across in different, settings, because just using that wrong word could change the whole context of a particular sentence or paragraph. And if that's going to be used in court as evidence, it could even have an overall a totally different outcome because of the quality of the statement. I mean, again, we will be touching on the quality of the statement in a short while. I mean, have you had any situations like this, Burhani, that you want to share with us?
Well, not long time ago, it's not with the police, with the social services.
Okay.
It's like a domestic violence between a husband and wife. Actually, they were partners, and their relationship has been broken.
Yeah.
And the social services has visited the lady, the woman, and the woman didn't want to. The partner, even though the relationship has been broken, he used to come to her house and forcing her to have the relationship, like the sex relationship, and she needs this to stop happening, but she didn't want to go through the police to stop him. And at the first stage, the social service had asked her if she is fine to talk in front of me regarding the sexual issues.
Yeah.
And she said fine, but also she starting to talk to me in my own language. For the reason why she doesn't want to go to the police was her case between her and her partner, and she didn't want me to go to come to the social services.
Okay, and how did you deal with that?
I said I'm not feeling comfortable with this interpretation.
Yeah.
So I just have to quit on this stage. I don't interpret. That's why I said to social services.
So you told the social services what had happened, and that because of the code of conduct, you're obliged not to pursue that any further. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that input, Burhani. Okay, Jazz, we've also heard that there are situations sometimes when the interpreters can be asked to take statements home, to translate them into English and then send them back at a later stage. Does that happen?
Yeah, it has happened. It's happened with me, actually. It's not so much the police officer saying, can you take it home and bring it back? It's what the interpreters have asked if they're allowed to do. Simple reason being they might have another booking, the statement taking has gone on a lot longer than what they expected, so they want to take it home, do it in their own leisure and come back. No, that shouldn't happen. We need, for evidence for court, we need continuation.
Okay.
So you've taken that statement away, it's in your native language, we can't read what it says, how do we know they've not taken the statement home and changed it all?
Yeah.
Because it's simple, isn't it? Because they're going to have to take the original statement with them to translate. So if they do it there and then in the station, there's going to be no tampering with it.
Yeah.
If there is a time where an interpreter may say, well, I've run out of time, I've got another booking, I can't cancel now last minute, again, that's understandable. Take the statement off them, you can ask them to come later on that day. It should not go beyond that day to come back and complete the statement in a police building. They are not under any circumstances allowed to take it home.
So there's never a situation where the interpreter may be asked by the police officer to say, please can you take the statement home?
When I say that has never happened, I'm sure it has, so I can't obviously speak on behalf of everybody. I've never done that, and that is a written rule. We shouldn't be allowing that again because the statement could be tampered with.
That's fine, thank you, Jazz. Farhani, have you ever been put in that situation or where you've requested to take the statement home so you can finish off the translation when you get home and return it back to the station at a later stage?
Well, I haven't been in that situation to take the statements of the client home and bring it back at a later stage.
Okay.
But what happened years ago, I was interpreting with the solicitors.
Yep.
And we were taking notes, like a statement, and that are the original notes from the client.
Yep.
And he had his interview at later stage with the Home Office.
Yep.
And he changed his mind and completely changed one paragraph of his statement, what he said to the solicitor.
Right.
In his original statement when he goes to the Home Office. And then he's been refused because there was a discrepancy.
There's a discrepancy in the statement. And
normally the solicitors call the clients after their interview with the Home Office and asking them how it went, the interview with the Home Office. And he came to the solicitor saying that because he reads back the interview notes in the Home Office back to the client using an interpreter. I was not his interpreter at the reading back of the Home Office notes.
Yeah.
And the client has said that, well, I didn't say this at my first statement.
That's why, again, it's very, very important, because when you take a written statement, you take the statement in the native language, then you read it back to the client to make sure that they confirm and agree to all the contents in that statement, and they have to sign it at the bottom. So you're putting your own professionalism at jeopardy if, for example, there was a situation you took the statement home because the limited English speaker at a later stage say, well, actually, this isn't what I'd said, whereas when you're doing everything there and then, there's less chance of any disrepute between the contents of the statement.
So hopefully that's been very useful for you. We've covered a lot of ground, and I think with the importance of police statement taking, this is always going to be one of the areas that provides challenges for interpreters and the police alike. But knowing what to expect and what you should and should not be doing in these situations can often help you get it right first time. I'd like to thank Mirella, Farhani, Jazz and Pam, and hopefully we'll see you soon for another episode.